Hello. Welcome to another installment of the Central American Group's podcast, in which experts discuss topics related to doing business in Costa Rica, El Salvador, and the rest of the region.
Welcome to another edition of the Central American Group's series of podcasts. In these discussions that we have with expert individuals, we talk about trade in Central America and other issues that are important to foreign investors that are looking to do business in the region. Today we are speaking with Joanna Hill. She's a partner at CA Trade, which is located in San Salvador, El Salvador. The focus of this podcast will be on Salvadoran free trade agreements. Hello, Joanna. How are you doing today?
Doing well, thanks, Steve.
I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your background and about the company that you represent.
Yes, I work with CA Trade Consulting. It's a boutique specialized firm with offices in San Salvador and Costa Rica, and our clients are mainly local and foreign investors that want to take advantage of the different trade agreements that we have in the region. And before joining the firm, I was in government for around 15 years, mainly on relating to trade issues. And my last post was as Vice Minister of Economy of El Salvador, where we conducted El Salvador's trade policy, negotiation, and implementation of different trade agreements.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. How many free trade agreements has El Salvador entered into?
Well, El Salvador has different type of agreements depending on the partner that it's working with. Free trade agreements we have with Panama, the Dominican Republic, the United States, which is called the CAFTA-DR. We have a free trade agreement with Mexico, with Colombia, and with Taiwan. But we also have other types of agreements. We have partial scope agreements, which is the narrower scope, with Cuba and Ecuador. And we also have integration agreements that go beyond free trade within Central America. So we're in the process of forming a customs union, a little bit similar to what Europe has.
Okay, that's very interesting. Given the scope and the breadth of free trade agreements that El Salvador has and limited scope agreements, how can foreign investors benefit from these arrangements?
Well, I think that there are two main advantages to investing and exporting from Central America. One is our proximity to big markets, right? So we're very close to Mexico, to the US, and to the northern part of South America. And we have trade agreements with the countries around the area. So you have good market access conditions where, most products go in with zero duties. And we also have the market proximity and pretty favorable, I would call, rules of origin. Since we are on the smaller side of the economies, our main trading partners usually have favored us with rules of origin that are favorable to our reality. So for some industries and some products, we can bring in raw materials or intermediate products so that they can be finally processed and then sold abroad.
What's been the result in particular of the Dominican Republic Central American Free Trade Agreement? Has it stimulated trade between the U.S. and El Salvador?
Well, on the one hand, we already had very favorable preferences in the U.S. market with the Caribbean Basin Initiative. And what CAFTA did is kind of consolidate those preferences and also open the region to U.S. products. So it's not like we have seen a huge increase in trade because of the CAFTA-DR, because we already had that market access. What it did is consolidate it and give it a bit more of, clarity on what the rules of the game are in order to export to the United States. I do think that we could take better advantage of the CAFTA-DR agreement in other sectors that haven't received a lot of investment yet. For example, in the production of footwear, in textiles and apparel, there's still a lot of products that can be produced here, where we have a distinct advantage in terms of duty-free access that other markets don't have.
What are El Salvador's principal exports?
Well, obviously textiles and apparel is our main export, followed by agro-industrial products such as coffee and sugar, tuna fish, cheese, and honey. For those type of products, our main export markets are the U.S., Guatemala, Honduras, Spain, Canada, and Germany. After that, I would say food and beverages, such as pastry, cookies, snacks, sweets, fruit juices, carbonated beverages, and beer. And then it's light industrial manufacturing, plastic products, paper and carton products, and paint and certain chemical substances.
Now, according to research that I've done, there are future trade agreements that will be cemented by El Salvador with other countries. What are those, and what should companies that are looking to do business in El Salvador do to take advantage of them?
Well, I think that one of the recent trade agreements that we're implementing that's very interesting is one with the European Union, because we have access to all those countries. And once our products cross one of the markets, then they benefit from having free circulation within Europe. We have ratified, but it hasn't come into force, the Central American South Korea Free Trade Agreement. So that's our second trade agreement with Asia. I think that definitely everybody wants to have access to that market. And also, one of our biggest export destinations is Central America itself. And we have recently joined the Northern Triangle Customs Union, which goes a step further than what the rest of Central America is doing right now. And we'll have also the free circulation of goods within that Northern Triangle. So I think that will mainly benefit industries or investors that are really interested in the speed to market concept, and having their goods or intermediate goods or raw materials circulate freely will give them an advantage in terms of timing versus other competitors.
What advice would you give to companies that want to get involved with trade in Central America?
Well, I think first you need to get to know the region, in a bit more depth, our trade agreements. What benefits would you have at the level of your specific industry or product? Look at the rules of origin and see and how if you have a quota or some favorable market access that your competitors don't have. If you come to Central America, let's say they're Asian competitors, and you want to reach the U.S. market, then we have very favorable conditions, not only in terms of the free trade agreements, but also market proximity. But sometimes, the devil's in the details. So I would recommend doing a little bit of research on how your product looks in the different trade agreements. And then I would say that in general in Central America, and in particular in El Salvador, our governments are very interested in developing a close relationship with the different investors, understanding what their needs are, and trying to tailor a proposal or a package that will really make their investment work.
I'm sure that after listening to this conversation, there are going to be individuals that have more questions. How can people get in touch with you to ask them?
They can reach us through our webpage, www.catradeconsulting.com, and there you'll find our emails and all our contact information that they can reach if they need us.
Okay, unless you've got any other things to impart in terms of knowledge, I'm going to thank you for having a discussion with us, and it was very interesting.
Anytime.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for listening. Sign up to receive the Central American Group's quarterly newsletter by visiting www.thecentralamericangroup.com.